Hello, and welcome to Cooking with Miss Michelle. Today I'm going to show you how to roast a pumpkin. So for this recipe you'll need a pumpkin. You can use any color or type of pumpkin. You could use canned pumpkin when you make pumpkin pie or any other pumpkin recipes, but it's so much more delicious when you use a fresh pumpkin and they're not that hard to roast. So the first thing I'm going to do is, before I cut my pumpkin, I'm going to make sure I have a pan big enough to fit it, and this one looks like it will fit. So I'm gonna very carefully cut it in half, and sometimes they can be kind of hard to cut, so I just want to be cautious while I do this. And I'm gonna try to get it as evenly in half as I can. And then I should be able to split it in half and remove the stem. Whoop. Now before I go any further, I'm gonna preheat my oven so it'll be ready when I'm ready to put this in. So I'm gonna heat it to 400 degrees. And then I can scoop my seeds and the middle part out, just like I would if I was gonna carve this pumpkin, only it's a little easier since I have it cut in half instead of just a little hole at the top. Okay, so after I've taken all my seeds out, I'm just gonna use a big spoon. And actually, if you have a pumpkin scoop, you could use that. And I'm just gonna scrape all the stringy insides out. Then I can set it face down in my pan. And I'll just do the same thing with the other side here. Okay, so then after I have them in my pan and they just barely fit, I'm just gonna put about an inch of water in the pan. And then I'm gonna roast these in the oven. Now, depending on how thick they are and how big they are, this one looks pretty thin, but some pumpkins have a really thick side, so they might take a little bit longer. They could take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. So this looks like a thinner one. I'm gonna put this in the oven and I'll come check it in about 30 minutes. Okay, so my pumpkin has been in for about 40 minutes. It wasn't quite done after 30. So what I want to do is check and make sure it's soft if I poke it with a fork. My fork should go in pretty easily, so I can tell it's done, and it'll make a nice puree. So I'm going to really carefully take this out because it has water in the pan. And then I'm going to really carefully pour some of the water out into the sink. And then I'm going to make a puree, so I can use my cooked pumpkin to make my pumpkin pies. I could use it to make pumpkin soup. I like to make pumpkin mac and cheese, pumpkin lasagna. So this is actually not quite as soft as I would like it, but I think I can still puree it. So I'm just gonna scoop as much as I can out of my skin here and blend it up. So if you use a bigger pumpkin and you have more than you need and you're not gonna use it right away, I like to just freeze it in 2-cup increments, because that's about a small can of pumpkin. And then you can pull it out when you want to use it. So if you're making something like pumpkin soup or pumpkin risotto, then you could just use it straight out of the freezer. But if you're making something like pumpkin pie, the pumpkin can get kind of liquidy when you freeze it and thaw it back out. So what I usually like to do is use a fine mesh strainer with some cheesecloth in it. And then you can just put it on there over a bowl, and any extra moisture that you don't want will come out. And then you can have some thicker puree like you'd get in the can for your recipe. Okay, so I've scraped out as much as I could out of my skins here. If it was cooked a little bit longer, it would have been a little easier, so maybe cook yours for an hour. I'm just gonna blend up my pumpkin and make a nice puree here. So if it's cooked a little bit longer, it will be a little bit more easy to blend. If I shake it up a little bit, I should be able to get it to make a nice puree. Okay, so that looks perfect. So I think I'll have just enough to make myself a nice pumpkin pie. And if you have extra, like I said, you could freeze it or save it to make some other delicious pumpkin recipe. So thanks for watching my video, and happy pumpkin roasting.